James's deck dinner is steamed carrots and broccoli, some tomatoes, and grilled eggplant with some rice and a curry sauce. And he's going to continue to talk about Rumble and Robbie Robertson.
Oh yeah, I'll show
And yeah,
his autobiography.
yeah.
Testimony.
And I'm just going to go in because I am way too sore to be out here.
That's so bad.
So there's more food on the grill, so when you're done with that, just go plate it up for yourself. Enjoy.
I won't even do it while interviewing. Just in case something caught to the idea of me eating while I'm talking. Not that I care that much. I do it all the time when they're sitting at table, and so on and so forth. So, Rumble, The Indians Who Rocked the World is a revelatory documentary. It's not what I'm saying, it's what I'm reading. It's not exactly the blurb that explains things. Documentary that brings to light the profound and overlooked influence of indigenous people on popular American music, focusing on music icons like Link Ray, check the cover out, Jimi Hendrix. I gather he was 50% black, 50% indigenous American, 50% African American, 50% indigenous American. Or as they say in the United States still, I think, Indian. Jimi Hendrix, Buffy St. Marie. Buffy St. Marie, she's Canadian, or was. Maybe she changed her citizenship. She's Cree, I think. I think maybe full-blooded Cree. Taboo, from the Black Eyed Peas. Charlie Patton. Mildred Bailey. Jesse Ed Davis. Robbie Robertson and Randy Castillo. Rumble, The Indians Who Rocked the World, shows how these pioneering Native American musicians helped shape the soundtracks of our lives. One person they left out was I just woke up, so I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. Tom Petty. And I gather he was at least a certain percent indigenous American. Why is that? Someone was saying that Tom Petty had a brother had dark, straight hair like Tom Petty, but almost suggesting that Tom Petty was albino, and saying that Tom Petty was indigenous. Who was that source? Tom Petty. Maybe he was making it up. There's a lot of muss, fuss, and bother now about folks appropriating indigenous, maybe not so much music, but indigenous ancestry. And it's coming from both sides of the political fence. A lot of squawking from the left-hand side. But the right-hand side was making a fuss about, what's her name, Elizabeth Warren, who was running for the Democratic presidential candidacy in the last election, and she proved it sufficiently, her ancestry, to at least some people. There's of course a lot of right-wing folks out there, and like in the United States, here in Canada too, but in the United States it's like 40% wacko right-wing. Like, you guys are just insane. Anyone who supports Donald Trump, I don't care if it's Donald Trump against Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump against Joe Biden. Now, it's not Donald Trump against anybody. If they start running, like the leader of Antifa against Trump, maybe I might think anyone would support him in that head-to-head tussle. Wouldn't be that bad a character. But yeah, if the Democrats, I hope not, nominate Bernie Sanders, anyone who supports Donald Trump against Bernie Sanders is a nut bar. And Bernie Sanders, as far as I'm concerned, his supporters are nut bars. Man, any folks out there who support Bernie Sanders, that's what I think of you. He's a Russian agent. Get that straight? It's just like Donald Trump. They're both Russian agents. They've got different goals. They're there to, whether or not they realize. I don't think even if Bernie Sanders realizes he's a Russian tool, with the both senses of the, at least two senses of the word tool. But and Donald Trump might, I don't know what he realizes. People are going around his, almost all the supporters. Biden is senile. Trump's nuts. Trump is stone cold crazy. And he's corrupt. He's always been corrupt, but now he's stone cold crazy. You know, like, eventually, you know, like the deep state has been very, very kind to him. But if he does what he suggests, like in his last moment, was what it was going to be like under him, a second term, like with that crazy insurrection he incited, deep state's going to have to do something about him. I'm not encouraging them to do it because I'm afraid it's going to cause civil war in the United States, and the only people who are going to come out winners in that sort of outcome is the Russians and the People's Republic of China. I shouldn't say the Russians, I should say Putin. And because Putin's not good for Russia, not good for the world. The People's Republic of China is not good for the Chinese. And who are the third? Well, Mahdi, you know, the Hindutva movement, the Hindu racists, call themselves nationalists maybe, they're racists. And who else? Oh yeah, Muslim fundamentalists. Like it's going to be, the Russians have tended to style themselves as Eurasian. So it's Asia strikes back. You might not like hearing me say that because it's going to sound like Orientalism. The one thing Asians have in common, I won't say all of them do, because they're Asians in shatter belts. In other words, in Vietnam, Afghanistan, that kind of area. Yeah, shatter belts is I think what they call it. Not shelter belts, shatter zones. Areas in between huge, big plains areas. The places that have tended to act as foci, I think is probably how the Latins would have roughly said it back in the day. They used to say CIs like Ks. Apparently. I wasn't there. I'm getting to be an old guy, but I don't got to go back to Roman times. It might come as a surprise to you folks. Some of you guys, I suppose, it's not too many of you think that I'm a reactionary. Go ahead, get that here. You guys are reactionaries. Anyone who thinks I'm a reactionary, I'm afraid is a reactionary. Corporatist. We talked about that before. We're going to talk about it again. We're going to talk about it until you guys turn dizzy and your heads fall off. I'm not talking about the sensible people out there. I'm talking about nifty, shifty, hefty lefties, Trump supporters, supporters of the corporate globalist agenda. I'm talking about the various fundamentalist religions, and that's the fundamentalist Protestant, fundamentalist Catholic, I'm afraid, fundamentalist Muslim, which is the mainstream Muslim, all the way to the extreme. And that's a vast majority of Muslims, sadly. Aside from Indonesia and possibly Nigeria, maybe 50% of Nigerian Muslims are fundamentalist and worse. But those are about the only. Indonesia is the biggest Muslim country in terms of population. Nigeria is quite large, but Middle East, the vast majority of Muslims there are fundamentalists, and when I say fundamentalist, unacceptably fundamentalist, fundamentalist to the extreme. So the extreme would be like ISIS, Al Qaeda, junk like that. So Tom Petty, talking about, according to his lights, he was at least part indigenous. I don't think he was mentioned once. I might have missed something. Anyway, I'll just show you the pictures on the back cover of some of the people that were mentioned in the introduction. Slash, looking less like Slash than, I don't know, he looks like a gone to see WWE wrestler, but I kind of liked his look back in the day when he was wearing the top hat. I think that's Slash. Link Ray there. I don't know who the hey this is. It's got that barcode on top of it. You know, it's almost like those, should try that on something instead of putting the black, kind of like delete over a person's eyes the way they do on some things. Maybe put a barcode there. Maybe Donald Trump, blackout, or blockout is, that's not black it out, with a barcode. And then with his IQ on it. You wouldn't have to use too many numbers because you wouldn't have to worry about using a third digit, if you get that. I will tell you that 100 is supposed to be average IQ. It's generally a little bit higher for some reason. There's Robbie Robertson, who died within the last week. I've forgotten who that is. It's not Iggy Pop, although it looks almost as old as Iggy Pop can be. There's Buffy St. Marie. And she came apparently from the same reserve that my sister kind of like married into here in Canada. It's called Piapot Reserve. So she lived there many, many years, and she had 3 daughters. 50% Cree, those daughters, minimum. And then, I'll say 50% Cree, and then a little bit of, looks like Powhatan, maybe a little bit of Shuswap, and a little bit possibly of Ojibwe, Anishinaabe. However you mispronounce that nowadays, and stuff like that, Buffy saying Canadian. Now, this is a pretty good series. They didn't have a picture of Jesse Ed Davis. I don't think I've ever seen a picture. They did play, it was kind of like the highlight of the whole thing. They had, I'm sure I was listening to it at that moment. It was Jackson Browne, I think, talking about his first big hit, single. It wasn't that big. I think it was 1972. It sure perked my ears up when I first heard it, and it still does. And I was talking about Jesse Ed Davis, who came from Oklahoma, maybe even Tulsa, Oklahoma. That's where Robbie Robertson saw Jesse Ed Davis, I think somewhere around 1960, Tulsa, Oklahoma. And Jesse Ed back in that day had long hair, long, straight black hair, I guess. Presumably straight. And he approached Robbie. Robbie was working with Rompin' Ronnie Hawkins and the Hawks. He was young. He was 16 when he joined that group. It might have been a little after that when Jesse Ed saw. But Jesse Ed was just learning the ropes. And Robbie, I think, gave him a few tips and so on and so forth. So Jesse Ed. And apparently, like he didn't want to do Doctor My Eyes, which is the song by, I was mentioning, leading up to, into Jackson Browne. But when Jackson Browne decided to use Jesse Ed on that one, as the story went, it was related in this documentary, Jesse Ed just said, okay, I'll do it. Did it in one take. I'm telling you, Jesse, wherever you are. Thank you, buddy. It still gets to me. It still gets to me. I'm going to get a little bit of a frog in my throat just talking about it. Ain't a long solo. So what Jackson Browne does is verse, chorus, chorus. And then Jesse Ed does, as I recall, the third verse, and then Jackson Browne comes in for the third chorus. Now, one of the things they did on this is, hey, when you're doing a music documentary, stop the flapping the gums and you play the music all the way through. And you know, you listen to Jesse Ed on the end of that, the outro of Dr. My Eyes. And it's not blazing like he is, the guitar isn't blazing like it is on the, you'd call it the break or whatever. It's basically the instrumental third verse. But it's kind of like understated. It's just kind of like, not like fading away, but kind of like breaking apart or something like that. It's like a storm breaking apart or something like that. You know, and it kind of goes with what Jackson Browne was singing, you know, Dr. My Eyes. How does it go? Tell me what you see. Is this the price? No, how does it go? It's something like it's too late for me, something like that. Or no, I cannot see the sky. Is this the price for having learned how not to cry? I think that's the way it ends. But it just kind of breaks apart. It's like clouds breaking apart after a storm. And Jesse, it's just kind of like almost like little cries or something like that. I'm not sure. It's really understated. It's really well done. So thank you, Jesse Ed, wherever you are, upstairs, downstairs, or somewhere in between. You know? Did a good job on that. I think it is a drug casualty. It's too bad. Crashability. Robbie Robertson could have been one. You know, he talks in his autobiography about having a little bit of trouble with alcohol, maybe a little bit of trouble with too much trouble with toot. But the weird thing is, he's kind of like the guy who held the group together. This is an interesting autobiography. I don't know if there's going to be more to it, but it basically wraps up with the end of the band, and I think that was roughly 1976. So at that point in time, he would have been something like 32. If the calculations I carried out in my head are roughly correct. And so that means he basically spent with the band, at least one member of the band, Levon Helm, the drummer for the Hawks and later with the band. He'd spent half his life with them. But, you know, like if he's 32, that means he spent 48 years outside of the band, because their swan song was a movie, and maybe the best movie I've seen about rock and roll, called The Last Waltz. It was directed by Martin Scorsese. And Scorsese has done other things. He started off, I think, in his music filming career, with working on Woodstock, kind of like a technician of some description or another. And here he is, Martin Scorsese, talking with Robbie Robertson, I believe, about filming The Last Waltz, which was at the Winterland. I suspect it might not even exist. I think it's a hockey arena, hence the term Winterland. It might have actually been in San Francisco, not just in the San Francisco area. Here's another cut from The Last Waltz. There's some nice pictures here. Of course, stuff like this would be available. You notice how Robbie Robertson is not it's not the focus of this picture. You know, it's kind of like the way he was with a band. You know, his band, I guess that's the way it worked out. But I think he always preferred the team approach. And I always used to wonder why he didn't sing. You know, I think it was because he was even though he played lead guitar and stuff like that, he's laid back. One of my favorite songs, band songs, maybe of all time, was something called To Kingdom Come. And apparently he sang at least parts of that, maybe the verses and stuff like that. And I thought he did a pretty good job. that might have been close to my favorite song on the first album, with the possible exception of The Wait. So that dates back to 1968. So here's The Last Waltz, and Robbie Robertson with his former mentor, Rompin' Ronnie Hawkins. And folks out there, you know, like, I'm not fat phobic. I'm not the way nature is. You see Robbie Robertson's not lugging around extra weight. You see Rompin' Ronnie Hawkins, he didn't last, I don't think, as long as Robbie Robertson. Nature is fat phobic. I'm going to show you Rompin' Ronnie Hawkins came from something like West Helena, Arkansas, or Fayetteville, Arkansas. Here's Rompy. It's unbelievable. I'd never seen a picture of him when he was younger. This would have been maybe about 1960. Compare and contrast. Okay? So Robbie Robertson was saying Rompin' Ronnie did flips and then something called a camel walk. Apparently it's an early version of something like Michael Jackson's moonwalk. This is when he was performing. You can't imagine Rompin' Ronnie doing this in 1976, 16 years later. Compare and contrast, okay? So Robbie Robertson was, when he was doing this concert, he was surprised. You can see it on film. Joni Mitchell comes out, she's being introduced, he's doing the emceeing, and she kisses him. And then she kind of caresses his face. And you're going, what? What's going on here? But you can see that she kind of admired his looks. Maybe his personality, too. So here's a picture. It's quite the setup they've got there. They tried to go with a waltz kind of trope and stuff like that. So here they are on stage. I don't know if that's Bobby Charles there on the extra keyboard, but there are some amazing pictures here. Here's Robbie Robertson looking like a dad from the 70s or something like that. Those were his two daughters. Here he is with Elliot Roberts, I think a manager for who was it? Joni Mitchell, maybe Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. There's Bob Dylan, looking very on Bob Dylan, like I think that's him. And there's Robbie Robertson. This is the guy who now, well, he's the world's biggest movie mogul and one of the world's biggest bumheads, David Geffen. For a while, he weaseled his way into the hearts of, at very least the minds, not the hearts of Joni Mitchell and Jackson. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young and on and on. Bob Dylan for a while. This is the guy maybe Bob Dylan should have stuck with. He died quite early. Again, nature's fat phobic, Albert Goldman. He was his manager pretty well from the get-go. Here's Richard Manuel, a guy who believed in suicide on the installment plan until he decided to get off the plan and do it himself. He hung himself, poor fellow, but here's the car that he crashed. I don't know what his problem was, but I feel for him. I can't exactly feel for him because, like when I was dying of cancer, all I wanted to do was survive. There we go. Here there's the band, three of them, performing Daniel and the Sacred Harp, dancing through the clover. Here's one of the first pictures I ever saw of them. I think this made it into Rolling Stone magazine. They looked so square. This would be 1968, and this guy looks like something out of Bonnie and Clyde. Garth Hudson looks like a music teacher, and that's how he persuaded his parents to let him go with a rock and roll band, because he had classical training. He said, I'm giving them music lessons. Levon Helm looking like kind of like maybe the Southerner from the Civil War. Rick Danko looking like I don't know, someone from maybe the 1890s or something like that in the U.S. And Robbie Robertson almost looks like an American rabbi. I don't know what he looks like. It's incredible how he's hiding his looks, wearing glasses. And at the very least, a goatee. It's more of a beard than a goatee. Hilarious. Of course, that picture is famous. Some of these other things I've never, ever seen before. They're pretty amazing. Most of them not in color almost. I think I see one in color, that's about it. They've got some other pictures here that may be a little less. Again, here, I don't know. He almost looks like a rabbi or something. I don't know what sort of cap he's wearing. It might be more Arabic than anything. Of course, a lot of Jewish rabbis back in the day would have had to conform to Arabic culture. There's Garth Hudson looking like a cross between a mad scientist and a mad long-hair musician. He was their organist. I don't know if he's still alive. I pray you're still alive, Garth Hudson. There's Dominique Louise Bourgeois. That's Robbie Robertson's wife. And, there was some guy who wrote a manifesto for something called Front de Libération du Québec, the Quebec Liberation Front, talking about the white N-words, and he didn't say N-words, of North America. Come on. This woman is a classic beauty, Geneviève Bujold, according to Western tradition. Another one, movie star, Jacqueline Bisset, or Bisset, however you want to mispronounce the name. Another one, French-Canadian beauty. You can't go around saying, oh, French Canadians are like Negroes. They're so, no. There's the problem with the skin color, and there's the problem with various features and stuff like that. People from Africa tend to look very different from people from Europe, particularly from the northern part of France. The people from the northern part of France, the ones who tended to settle in Quebec, tended to be Normans, i.e. Vikings, i.e. Scandinavian, and off in the northwest, Celtic people, like Irish people, Scottish people, Welsh people. These are the people that traditionally have been considered the best looking people in the world. Scandinavian women and Irish men. Pierce Brosnan, George Clooney. Who is that guy who is the pirate and stuff like that back in the 40s or something like that? I'll think of the name. But he was considered, the graffiti used to be, so-and-so still holds the record, Errol Flynn. I don't know, is Flynn Welsh or is it Irish? Here's Robbie Robertson, looking actually the most comfortable with fame and stuff like that, in an uncomfortable kind of way. Handsome as 10 movie stars. And he's, he doesn't come from a European background. Oh, Jews are Europeans. No, they're not. So he's half Jewish, half Mohawk, and 1/4 Mohawk, 1/4 Cayuga. So that makes him 1/2 Iroquois. So here's the band looking at each other. Many of them are looking at each other, lining up for the lining up for the washroom. It's hilarious. Richard Manuel without the long hair, and very much like 3/4 of the Beatles, looked better with the long hair because he had the jug ears there. Here's some members of the Hawks, with Fred McNulty, who is the kind of like the original, from what I can tell, Bubbles of the Trailer Park Boys. Rompin' Ronnie